I must say that I'm quite honored to be one of the guests here because being here really, as Ndumiso has indicated, gives me a bit of nostalgia. As you know, we started quite a while back, 2006, when we were really spearheading these emerging research areas. And I was listening in awe and thinking, these are no longer emerging areas. Now we are in full-fledged of implementation. And what I'm going to present is going to help us in a great deal, in a sense that a whole lot of things that I'm going to talk about already they are in the sphere or in the space of the community here, where now we look at that gap, which has always been articulated by DST as the chasm, the innovation chasm. But when you look at it, you see that for the longest time, we haven't been able to really plug that gap. And for some reason, in the past 3 years, we are really talking about how then do we really close that gap. And maybe just to do a disclaimer, Ndumiso earlier on gave me a topic around additive manufacturing, so that then my talk talks to the theme of today. But in our later discussions, we looked at it and I said it will do disjustice if I don't then dwell on what the plans we have around technology commercialization. And then being the people in the sector or in this sphere, you will be able to then link and plug in terms of what really is relevant to you and how you can plug into the processes that we have. So today, I'm going to be telling you about what we are doing in this space. And initially, what I'm going to talk about, briefly the innovation value chain, where we locate commercialization. And I know most of you are aware of this space, so I will not dwell on it much. But I'll show you the kind of work that we've done in the past, I think, 2 years with all the stakeholders involved, which will be your TIAs, your IDC, your CEDA, DST, DTI, all the people whom we call the National Systems of Innovation stakeholders. Then I'll go into who are the stakeholders, talk about in our deliberation and our studies, there's quite a number of studies that have been commissioned. What were the commercialization steps as agreed, which most of you are not really far off in terms of defining them. And then what is the gap that we've seen there? And, briefly, how did we then think we're going to put in the plug onto the gap? And for this session, I thought I'll talk about 2 programs that we run within the DTI that might be relevant to this platform. One is talking about the role of incubation in technology commercialization, and 2, talk about the new technology platforms around technology clustering. Now, you'll see that at some point in 2014, my desk or my unit led a discussion between all the stakeholders within an NSI, where one of the things we were trying to do there was to define what the innovation value chain is and try and locate each department within the steps that, because before the time you'll find that we talk about moving from an idea, all of us, and getting into the market. But when you start talking about what then are the things that are pertinent to that process, we were then talking a different language. And I'm pleased to tell you that one of the things that happened during this process is that we then defined the innovation value chain, as you see there on top, which has 3 main areas: the concept phase, the development phase, and the commercialization phase. Because all of us, when you are moving from this side, you are talking about either ideas, either concepts, either invention. For us within the DTI, grassroots innovation, garage innovation, knowledge, indigenous knowledge systems then become very pertinent in terms of how do we then transfer those into the commercialization space. Then you have the technology development as all we understand it to be. You have, at some point, technology market and validation, where you now start looking at whatever you have developed, how do you really then choose specific markets for that? Then you'll have a product development phase, where part of it will then move into small-scale manufacturing and market entry. Now you'll see what we try to do with that is to also map the technology readiness levels, because people within the universities and science councils will understand then the language in terms of by the time you need to be approaching the DTI or approaching the IDC, at what stage of technology development will you be at?